Last week in Michigan politics, we're now less than 3 months away from the August primaries. What new numbers have to say about a key statewide race? Plus, after severe weather hammered the state last month, leaders are surveying the damage just as the state's governor asks the federal government for more time for a key decision. And after reported allegations of sexual abuse surfaced this year against civil and labor rights activist Cesar Chavez, a local neighborhood is asking for feedback about a potential name change to a Grand Rapids street named after him. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. And we begin this week with your voice, your vote, and what can feel like a roller coaster watching the polling numbers for the U.S. Senate race here in Michigan. They can vary widely depending on which poll you look at. We took a look at some of the new polls out earlier this week. The race for the Democratic nomination for our open U.S. Senate seat has appeared to ramp up a lot in recent weeks, with candidates continuing to hit the trail with a lot of debate and sometimes controversy in their way. Now a new poll is offering what it says is the latest glimpse into how the race may be shaping up roughly 3 months to primary election day. A new poll conducted by Mitchell Research and Communications, Inc. in just the last couple weeks or so shows former Wayne County health official Dr. Abdul El-Sayed with the lead in what signs have pointed to be a very tight race. It shows El-Sayed with 28% support amongst respondents, taking a lead over both Congresswoman Haley Stevens at 18% and Mallory McMorrow, state senator, at 17%. That separation between Stevens and McMorrow did fall within the poll's margin of error. Now, there have been a number of new polls out in the last couple months or so, all with unique findings. So while campaigns and voters may make of these numbers as they will, undecided voters have continued to be a huge recurring pot in much of the recent polling in this race. You take a look at it here with roughly 3 months until the August primaries. A large share of this poll's respondents, 38%, remained undecided in who they might choose for this primary. But how might each of the major Democratic candidates fare in November's general election in hypothetical scenarios? Well, for a glimpse into what we could expect from that, we have another new poll announced Tuesday by the Detroit Regional Chamber. In that poll, former Congressman Mike Rogers, aiming to secure the Republican nomination for the seat, led all 3 major Democratic candidates here in hypothetical head-to-head matchups, where his lead over McMorrow and Stevens were within the poll's margin of error. His lead of 4.9% over Abdul El-Sayed did not. For more numbers from both these new polls, you can go to the story on our website, 13onyourside.com. As polls have indicated that Democratic primary to be a tight race, accusations have continued to fly, and it would seem none of the major candidates are immune from controversy on this trail. Following a recent CNN K-File report on what it said were deleted tweets from McMorrow disparaging Middle America, after which she told CNN she tweeted, quote, normal things like a normal person and that people are desperate for authenticity. This week, a new report from Politico alleged that while El-Sayed has referred to himself as a physician, he has a slim background in treating patients. A spokesperson for his campaign reportedly referencing to Politico El-Sayed's 2 doctorates, telling the publication a story of why he wanted to work in public health over practicing medicine, and that rather than a gotcha attack, it's his origin story. Stevens' campaign and image also came under recent scrutiny after large advertising presence from a separate group, Center for Democratic Priorities, in support of her stance on immigration and customs enforcement, a group some have felt to be shrouded in mystery, and an ad some argue is in contrast to her true record on the issue. Her congressional office has in the past asserted Stevens has demanded transparency of ICE and pushed for what it called a drastic overhaul of the agency. Democratic Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Jocelyn Benson is asking for more transparency when it comes to utility companies in the state requesting rate hikes through the state's regulatory commission. Recent legislation introduced in the Michigan House is also aimed at changing how the Michigan Public Service Commission works by proposing an expansion to the number of seats on the regulatory body and making them elected positions instead of appointed ones. We asked Benson what she thought about the pending legislation. She told us that there needs to be a transparent selection process, whether it comes from voters or the governor through an appointment process.
I think the more eyes on the process, the better. But I also worry, and I say this as the Secretary of State who's overseen campaign finance systems, I worry about the same problems that's corrupted the current system, corrupting an elected system where you have the possibility for public utilities to simply just fund the campaigns of people running for the commission and potentially create additional conflicts of interest. So for me, the goal needs to be reforming the process that ends those conflicts of interest.
Benson added that banning members of the MPSC from non-public communications with utility companies and barring them from taking payments or employment from utility companies are also reforms she would like to make if elected governor. In Michigan, those experiencing a mental health crisis and in need of transportation often may have to wait for an ambulance or a police car. But some lawmakers in Lansing think there's a better way to get people quick, safe, and appropriate transportation to those who need it. Coming up, more on the bipartisan plan to fix what some have seen as a major issue in our state. State lawmakers are considering a new measure to help people experiencing a mental health crisis quickly get the help they need. Right now, they often may have to wait for an ambulance or a police car. Under this proposal, supporters argue that would change.
Mental health is not just a policy to me.
For State Senator Sylvia Santana, she says,
it is family. I carried my father's story with me. I carried my grandmother's story with me. And I know that there are thousands of families across Michigan with the stories just like theirs.
And for those facing behavioral and mental health crises, she and other lawmakers like Steve Frisbee, a former paramedic, are teaming up to help deal with what they've seen as a major problem.
What became very frustrating as the rise of mental health crisis rose in Michigan and across the nation is the delay in transport.
Frisbee, alongside those like Santana and Senator Mark Huizenga, among a bipartisan group behind an idea aimed at opening up fast and safe transport for people in those crises.
Your options are limited, especially if you have Medicaid. These bills will provide a safer, more affordable solution to people in crisis.
The bills would open up behavioral health transportation to be covered by Medicaid and would set up a framework of guardrails to regulate those drivers and vehicles. Things like licensing, vehicle safety standards, and training for those working at the transport agencies. It's a change they believe will free up resources like ambulances to respond to other local needs, ones they may be better suited for.
Imagine the EMS units that will still be available for complex medical conditions like heart attacks, strokes, and other emergencies.
Medicaid itself has been the subject of a lot of change from the federal level, and as a result, expected adaptation from the state to keep it running in Michigan. But as some ambulance services can already get reimbursed through Medicaid, they believe this could actually lower costs.
If we have this alternative option that's one less person, a less expensive vehicle, but can safely transport them, it'll be at a lesser cost. So my prediction would be we will see fewer costs as a result of this.
April was a particularly active month for severe weather in many parts of our state, from flooding to tornadoes. Now, roughly a month after beginning to place nearly half of Michigan under state of emergency status, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is asking the federal government for more time to determine whether a federal disaster declaration from the White House will be needed. On Friday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office announced she was asking for an extension from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, on deciding whether to seek a major disaster declaration from President Donald Trump. Depending on what they find, the office said the state could request individual assistance, which it described as direct help for homeowners and renters, or public assistance, which it said could include reimbursement for local governments, certain nonprofit entities, and tribal agencies for response costs, debris removal, and repair of damaged infrastructure. However, prolonged and repeated flooding events, her office indicated, contributed to delays in some communities submitting damage estimates to the state. According to the Code of Federal Regulations, the governor has 30 days past the occurrence of an incident to submit a request to the president. This can be extended if the governor requests to do so during that 30-day window. As that request plays out, state and federal agencies will be surveying storm damage for the next couple weeks in one of the largest assessments to ever happen in Michigan. 13 on Your Side's Micah Cho met up with surveyors in Kalamazoo and has the story.
April storms brought up river levels across the state, not just Kalamazoo County. Over the next couple of weeks, 6 teams of Michigan State Police and emergency management staff, FEMA, and Small Business Administration officials will visit 30 counties. That includes Muskegon River flooding that impacted parts of Newaygo and Muskegon counties, and further north, like Sheboygan.
We have a really close coordination with our local emergency management partners, along with our state partners. They're the ones that saw this damage firsthand. They were there from day one. They know their communities the best. And so we really rely on them to take us to where those areas are that had the greatest impact and potentially the greatest need.
Federal assistance is not available right now, so all of this data has to go to the governor's office, and then she has to request federal aid from the president. For now, in Kalamazoo, I'm Micah Cho for 13 on Your Side.
The state's second-largest city is hearing public comment on how it could spend taxpayer dollars in next year's proposed budget. After the break, we go inside the latest public hearing and have more on concerns from residents. This past March, multiple women reportedly accused civil and labor rights activist Cesar Chavez of sexual abuse, which led to communities across the country canceling events to honor him. Now the Roosevelt Park neighborhood is asking for feedback about a potential name change to Cesar Chavez Avenue in Grand Rapids. 13 on Your Side's Rick Dorsey has the story.
Cesar Chavez is a prominent civil rights activist known for his nonviolent tactics to improve conditions for migrant farm workers. However, in March of this year, multiple women told the New York Times that Chavez sexually abused them for several decades, many as children. Since then, there have been many calls to remove Chavez's name from public spaces, including here in Grand Rapids. Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association posted a petition asking for input on a proposal to change Cesar Chavez Avenue back to Granville Avenue. Joshua Reyes owns M&M Bakery and supports the idea.
Our business started on Granville Avenue. We went through our struggles, through our successes on Granville Avenue. So myself, my mother included, we have emotional ties to Granville Avenue.
I would be very happy to have the name revert back to Granville Avenue, just in light of the negative impact that we've seen.
However, not everyone supports the idea, including Dr. Jose Flores at La Familia Stop and Shop.
I'm really upset with the fact that we're even considering this. I think it's definitely a double standard. Had it been a white person, we'd have a different ballgame, wouldn't we?
13 on Your Side reached out to the Grand Rapids City Commission to see if there is an update to the proposed name change. As of earlier this week, we had not yet heard back. Policing and road safety. Those are some of the concerns people in Grand Rapids want addressed in the next city budget. 13 on Your Side's Nick Nelson was at City Hall this past week with the input leaders got at a public hearing.
We want to hear feedback from the public. The things that's in the proposed fiscal 27 plan. The plan collectively is $785 million.
And feedback is what City Manager Mark Washington and members of the Grand Rapids City Commission got. The budget that doesn't raise the city millage but does account for rising property values focuses on public safety and safe streets. However, some members of the public who've advocated for more safety features on Kalamazoo Street wanted more answers on how the budget could improve safety there.
What we would like is something, just give us a little concrete information, something that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. That's important to me. It's important to them.
3rd Ward Commissioner Marshall Kilgore addressed the concern, saying $600,000 has already been set aside for this fiscal year to improve street safety in the area.
What you all have illuminated for us and staff is a need for increased transparency on our processes, right? So we will continue to be lockstep with you all as we assess what works best.
Many people also said they believe the police budget of more than $75 million needs to be reduced on the heels of several officer-involved shootings over the last few years. Many who spoke out for police reform were high school students.
When trust disappears, communities become less safe for everyone. I am asking this commission to seriously consider policies that keep local law enforcement focused on local public safety priorities.
At the end of the meeting, Mayor David LeGrand said while he doesn't agree with anti-police sentiment, he appreciates that the public wants to see criminal justice reform.
I go on ride-alongs roughly once a month, and the officers who I see doing their job are trying to enforce and administer justice within the parameters that they are set by policy. And they do that work courageously, and they do that work with good faith and with the best of efforts.
When it comes to next steps, the City Commission was expected to hold final discussions during 2 separate meetings before ultimately voting on whether to adopt the budget. From green space to housing, zoning can play a huge role in what can happen in a city and what can't. That's why Grand Rapids city leaders say they want to hear from neighbors about what changes they want to see. 13 on your side's Lauren Baker has what community members have to say about the issue.
A building over here and green space over there. All things play in with the crucial factor, zoning.
It's something people don't often think about, but it really plays a role throughout our entire city.
The legal framework is used to make up a city, and as the city of Grand Rapids is continuing to make changes, they want to hear from you.
The zoning impacts our built environment and how people interact with our city as they go about their daily lives. It impacts your neighborhoods, it impacts business districts, it impacts our downtown.
Assistant Planning Director Layla Islani says leaders are getting into regulations around zoning after feedback from its most recent community master plan. She says they've already received some input from people, but now it's time to go deeper.
Existing zoning ordinance is very good, but it doesn't quite get all of the goals and align with the vision that the community established with the community master plan. So this is making sure that those goals and visions are codified into our new rules.
That's why the city is hosting a meeting where people can ask questions, discuss topics, and learn how zoning can be used to make changes to the city's walkability, green spaces, and even housing.
The city of Grand Rapids limits are not going to move outward, so we need to figure out how can we get more housing within our existing neighborhoods and business districts.
And the work won't stop there.
After we take all the information that we get tonight, we're going to be coming back later this year or early next year and digging deeper into some of the topics.
All in an effort to continue to make Grand Rapids a city everyone wants to live in.
A local high school had a very high-profile keynote speaker at its commencement ceremony this past week. The message the state's top executive had for the class of 2026 as she returned to her alma mater. That's next. High school graduation ceremonies are taking place across West Michigan this season. The keynote speaker at one on Thursday night, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She addressed the graduating seniors at her alma mater, Forest Hills Central, where she graduated in 1989. 13 on your side's Jordan Hatfield was there and has more on what she told the class of 2026.
Commencement, a time when the future is unwritten and for students to hold the pen. For the over 200 graduating Forest Hills Central seniors, that lesson was writ large by fellow Ranger Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
It says Big Gretchen on it, my new favorite jacket, thank you.
Whitmer reminded those seniors she was in their shoes nearly 40 years ago, with her own share of embarrassing stories.
It was the night of when I went partying before the FHC football game. I passed out in the parking lot, and I threw up on my principal's shoes. And I'm sure you're thinking, how the heck did she end up being governor? And truthfully, I marvel at that myself some days.
But during those years, Whitmer applied herself, even becoming most improved student in her junior year.
I would not be where I am today if I didn't have strong, supportive parents, thoughtful, compassionate teachers, and a forgiving principal.
And she is undeniably proud of being a Ranger, something she hopes the class of 2026 will echo.
Years from now, you may or may not remember it all. But what you will remember, more than anything, are the people, your classmates.
And put forward.
Your obligation is to build strong communities, like the one you've had here, wherever you go.
No matter what they go on to do.
None of us knows exactly where we're going, and that's the best part. I thank you all so much for welcoming me today. This is my last year as governor, and that's why I wanted to be here for my final commencement speech with fellow FHC Rangers. I'm so proud of you. I wish you all the best. I am rooting for you. Big Gretch out. Thank you.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com.